So there is no freedom of speech in the EU, in the European Union anymore. This is not my personal opinion. This is the result of a report of the US Congress of 160 pages published in early February. And according to this US report, the EU Commission established in recent years a system of complete censorship all over the European Union. And the result, let me read that. The result of this Congress report is, so just a moment. EU regime pressured platforms in the internet to suppress lawful speech, including speech that was true, simply because it was politically inconvenient. And this is one of the results of this House of Judiciary Committee report of the chairman, Jim Jordan. And it is very clear that the European Commission is transforming itself into a censorship authority against democracy and in opposition to all democratic constitutions all over the map in the European Union.
There's a person we both know, which is Colonel Jacqu Bu, who, again, he's a colonel in the Swiss intelligence services. He's retired now. He's very well known for his great analysis, and he has worked for NATO as a Swiss intelligence agent or colonel, and apparently the EU didn't like his analysis. That is, he reached the conclusion that the war in Ukraine had been provoked. Again, one can agree or disagree. I happen to agree with this analysis, but he never had a day in court or anything. Just one day he woke up and the EU put him on sanctions list, not because he said anything that was false, proven that he's received payments from anywhere, but just because his conclusion or analysis, it was seen as accepting or repeating a Kremlin talking point, which was then seen as advancing the Kremlin narrative. And for this, he was punished with sanctions. What exactly does this situation look like?
Well, I know Colonel Jacqu Bu personally, and I visited him in Brussels. He's okay so far, but he's also really nervous because he is a Swiss citizen living in Belgium. He cannot travel to his homeland. It's not allowed for him to travel. His bank accounts are completely frozen, and all his property is confiscated. The only thing the Belgium state allows is he can take 500 euros a month to buy food. And I heard that the neighbors are cooking for him. So this is just a situation to censor and to bring men under pressure and persons under pressure who don't align to the NATO propaganda and the EU propaganda. And this is completely extra legal. So the EU minister, as the EU ministers created an instrument, a tool to bring people under pressure and to shut their mouths by sanctions, which is completely illegal, and again, against all democratic constitutions in the EU. So the only conclusion I can have, and this is the same conclusion of the US Congress, is European political elites are destroying democracy to stay in power.
What is so shocking, though, with the Colonel Bo is that there's no laws that have been broken, and he's not even in a position to defend his argument. He can't defend himself in court. There is no legal recourse. It's just now you're not allowed to travel. All your assets frozen. You're not allowed to receive help from anyone, and there's again, as you said, this is there's no laws for this. It's illegal. It's just sanctioning citizens for who have committed no crimes. It is quite shocking. So, for anyone who argues that this U.S. paper is hyperbolic or exaggerating, I mean, it's very hard to justify what has actually been done to him and others for that sake. This is propaganda. This is when governments aren't able to defend their position anymore. Anyone challenging the official truths come under this kind of attack by the government. It is the death of freedom. So, but you've argued, though, that the media has become much more propagandistic. How do you see this as simply being a transitional issue because we're in a we're pretty much fighting now a direct war against Russia, or is this simply, or do you think this is permanent? Because it's very hard to go back to normal the way things were after we see European governments doing this kind of things against their own citizens.
I think this is a complete transformation of democracy on the European level into a kind of, anti-democratic and warmongering despotism. And this is the goal. According to the Hungarian Minister-President Viktor Orban, the EU decided to wage a war against Russia in the next years. And so warmongering and going into new wars and propaganda and censorship, on the other hand, are two sides of the same medal. They want to close up the public debate space to make it easier to bring their own citizens into a new war. And this is very dangerous because the Russian Federation announced that this won't be a war in a Ukrainian style, so a low-level war. So the Russian Federation made very clear that this will become a nuclear war at once. So it's very, very dangerous. But the background of all this warmongering and all this censorship is they lost control over their investments. NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte signed in 2013 as Prime Minister of the Netherlands a contract with the Ukrainian government and the company Shell to explore the gas, minerals and the minerals and the gas in eastern Ukraine. So it's an investment of billions. It was an investment of billions. But now all these territories are in Russian hands. So they miscalculated their investments. And now European citizens should die for their profits. And that's the background. And so people is sleeping against the abyss. They don't go to the streets and they don't fight for peace in the European Union. And that is a result of permanent propaganda and permanent censorship in the EU. And I don't believe that the political elites won't stop that. They will go on and go on to stay in power.